On today's episode of the MilCom Founders Podcast, we'll meet Charles Woodin, CEO of Geekdom, a collaborative workspace where entrepreneurs help each other build businesses together in San Antonio. Charles brings a unique blend of military intelligence experience and technology leadership, having served 8 years in the U.S. Air Force as an airborne Korean linguist and intelligence specialist, reaching the rank of staff sergeant. After his military service, he transitioned into the tech sector with roles including business development manager at Apple before finding his calling at Geekdom, where he has risen from membership director to CEO, driving innovation and entrepreneurship initiatives throughout San Antonio. Growing up in Detroit and Flint, Michigan, Charles witnessed urban decline firsthand, which now fuels his passion for building up San Antonio as a thriving place where his daughters Penelope and Amelia can one day choose to call home.
Welcome to the MilCom Founders Podcast, where we champion and celebrate military community business founders. In each episode, we will talk with a MilCom business founder to learn how they work through various obstacles and opportunities in business and in life. I'm your host, Rod Loches. Let's meet today's guest. Welcome to the MilCom Founders Forum podcast. I'm your host, Rod Loches. Each of our conversations is designed to champion and celebrate a military community founder while inspiring and educating our community. Today's guest is Charles Woodin, the CEO of Geekdom, a very unique, I will call community, and I won't even say those words that other people might refer to it as, because I think it's such a great community. And Charles is also an Air Force veteran. And Charles, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Rod. It's my honor.
Absolutely. So, Charles, if you would, we're going to take a step back before we go forward. We'll learn a little bit about you as a person. So, tell us about, pre-military. How did you, where did you grow up? Why did you even think the military was an option for you? And just kind of spin us up a little bit on who you are.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised from Michigan, born in a little town. Well, I was born in Mount Clemens, Michigan, but was born and raised in a little town called Washington, which is right outside of Romeo, Michigan. Spent the first 10 plus years, around just over 10 years of my life there. Growing up, going to local elementary school, small little town feel. And then my dad, who was working for automotive manufacturing company doing seatbelts, NAFTA passed. So this is just to kind of set times. He was born early 80s, mid 90s now, or early 90s. NAFTA's passed. And that was a pretty big to do in our world because it led my dad to being sent from his company to Reynosa, Mexico to set up a factory there. So we relocated our family from, somewhat rural Michigan to McAllen, Texas, which for those who are unaware, Rio Grande Valley, 98% Hispanic. It was an eye-opening experience for me to have, to be right on the border, to really go from being near border Canada to near border Mexico. And I loved that experience. It was pretty formative in my life to see just how different areas are and people think. 2 years was that, experience for my life. After the factory was up and running, they basically told my dad, hey, you're good. We're done here. Go back. And so we relocated as a family back. But to give you a little bit of sense, I grew up maybe 30 minutes away from downtown Detroit when I was, from 0 to 10. When we moved back, we moved further away from Detroit, but closer to Flint, about 15 minutes away from Flint. And those are formative for, me when I'm graduating high school. Because as I'm graduating high school, everybody that I knew was finding their way over to the automotive industry. And that was not something that really got me super excited at that time. My sister had joined the military 2 years prior to me graduating high school. And it was really helpful in helping me understand what opportunities she had felt there. And so she coached me into doing that. And to be honest with you, as I graduated high school, I took the ASVAB. I was ready to go. But then, as many of us do, found a relationship and decided I was going to put those decisions on hold, stuck around Michigan, sought out that relationship. But then 2 years later, realized it wasn't a forever relationship. And I ended up deciding to take that ASVAB score, which was still good for like a month, and just decided to run into the Air Force and see what opportunities that brought me. And
Wow.
that was really what led me to the decision. And obviously, that took me on a completely different journey. But as far as who I was born and raised relatively small Michigan, and had that kind of out
Uh-huh.
of unique experience that helped shape me.
Absolutely. My dad lived in Mount Clemens. We had a lot of family up in Romeo and Utica and all that area. So I
Yeah,
know it. I know it well. I know it well.
it's
That's
a
for
very
sure.
small world. Yeah.
Yes, yes. All very quick. We call it the 1 degree world. So go figure, right? But very good. So, so you chose the Air Force out of all those other great options that you had. Why the Air Force?
It was really twofold. I would give credit where credit's due. Number one was my sister. She had decided to join the Air Force. I don't know what her motivations were, or at least I don't feel appropriate speaking for those on her behalf.
Uh
But
huh.
I know she had her reasons, and she liked it, and she had, she knew me well, and convinced me that this was the best of the options that she had experienced. And she had early in her career, she was doing lab technician, so she was doing blood draws and different tests and those types of things.
Okay.
And so she had a relationship with a lot of the other forces. And so she reinforced that the Air Force was where I should be. And I had the second piece would be, I always, I think like most kids dreamt of being a spy, I guess,
Uh
and
huh.
she convinced me that this one job that she had heard about was in alignment with that, which was being a linguist. And so she
Oh,
convinced me that I should pursue that. And so again, kind of tackling that timeline that I gave you earlier, I took the ASVAB in, I guess it would have been 2000, 2001-ish. I didn't join until 2002.
uh huh.
When I re-explored it in 2002, I went to the recruiter and I basically said, "Hey, I want to be a linguist." And at that time, they had a benefit where they would get what's it called, like a extra points for bringing
Yep.
on linguists. And mind you, this is right after 9/11, relatively close to that. And so we were in high demand. Linguists were in high demand, and there's a test that we have to take called DLab, and I think it's
All
called
right.
DLab, and
That's yeah.
it is a mind-boggling test, Rod. Like, it is crazy. They make up a made-up language. They sit you down. They go through that. I thought for
Wow.
sure I failed the heck out of that test,
Uh huh.
and it was two other people who took it with me. One of them up and left halfway through, so
Oh
obviously
my
they didn't
gosh.
make it. The other one that was taking it with me was a woman, and she, I guess, knew Germany, or sorry, knew German, and she had shared with me, "Oh yeah, this, I'm pretty sure I got it. It had some connection to that. I feel pretty good." And I was like, "Okay." And I remember very vividly that I was sitting in the waiting room waiting to hear our results, and there was one of those old school flat screen TVs in front of us, and they were so bad then that you could see the reflection pretty clearly of what was happening behind you. And I watched her as she got called up, walked over to the recruitment office, and then got turned away immediately. So right now, here's the person who felt the most confident of the three of us, who already got
Mm-hmm.
turned away, didn't end up getting it. So I thought for sure there was no chance that I passed this exam. And I get
Wow.
called in, and yeah, the guy was just like, "Hey, you passed. Not only did you pass, but you passed with, I don't remember the framing of the scores, but high enough that you can qualify for any language." And it took him three times telling me this to believe it. And then I
Uh
finally
huh.
said, "Okay." And I was on a plane 3 weeks later. So this is May
Wow.
2002. Yep. And that's when I joined.
But I got to ask, what language?
Korean is what I ended up landing on, which is the whole story in and of itself and how you land on what language it is. But that was the language I got picked for, and it was hard. It
Uh
was a
huh.
over 50% attrition rate for if 100 students went on that course path, less than 50 would graduate, and I
Wow.
made it through. Yeah,
Wow. So you stayed in the military for how long? How many years?
8 years. Joined in
8 years.
2002, exited in late 2010.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think you earned did you earn your degree while you were there as well?
My community college one through the Air Force, didn't end up getting my bachelor's. I started to pursue that once I got out of the military. Didn't end up completing it, but I'm about a year away from doing that. I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but the other journey that took me down this path. So
Yeah, understood, understood. So while you're serving our country in the Air Force, and I imagine you spent time in Korea, right? How could you not?
actually, that's where the story gets funny. There's two divergent paths that, as a linguist, at this
Uh
time, you
huh.
could take. One was airborne, where you'd fly on one of our aircraft within the United States Air Force, and then Another one was ground based, and if you were ground based, there was almost 100%. I mean, there's a small chance that you wouldn't end up in Korea, but if you were ground based, more than likely you'd end up in Korea. I went the flight route, and I didn't know that there was these divergent paths. To be honest with you, it was just, it was one of those things. If you ever watched Band of Brothers, we're like, hey, you want to fly in a plane? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And
That's right.
yeah, and so I took that choice, and then I get into this classroom with all these people that I became really really close with, specifically with that attrition down, and then to be
Yeah.
like, okay, well they're going over there and you're going over here. I was like, oh well, that sucks, but it was still really rewarding, and honestly, that pathway was unique in its own way. Being on the aircraft, got to meet a lot of other linguists. I loved that aspect of it. But yeah, unfortunately, one of the bucket list items I still have uncrossed is going to Korea. The closest I made it was Japan, made it to Okinawa for a period of time. But
I
yeah,
can't
never
believe
never
that.
set foot in the land. Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy. That's unbelievable. So, well, leave it to the military to to make decisions like that for us, right? That's for
Yep.
sure. Unbelievable. So you spent this time in the Air Force, and what are some of those things that you rely on to this day in business that you learned in the Air Force that you're like, hey, there's X that's important. What's some of those important points?
I'll say there are at least two that come to mind as you say that. Like number one, jobs got to get done one way or the other. And I take that to everything that we do. There are things, no matter what role you serve within the team that you're on business wise or the team that you're on military wise, this has got to get done, period, end of story. And it is not going to be fun. It's not going to be exciting. It's not sexy. You just got to do it. And I
Yep.
think realizing that, understanding it, swallowing it, and just doing it, and realizing that there is a camaraderie that can be built, there is a system that can be, experienced while doing that work. Once you get that understanding, you'll have a much better life. And so that
Hmm.
was one thing I learned really early on in the military that I'm very appreciative that I had. The second one I would say is leadership and the different approaches in leadership, good and bad. You get, because of the military, you have that really right in your face, bad and good. And you can really start piecemealing, this person did this and I loved the way that they approached this leadership style or approach of building consensus or something along those lines. But this was somebody who taught me that when something's got to get done, here's how you do it, and just don't mince words. That was for me.
Hmm.
I have I don't know if you've ever done strength finders with
Love it.
uh, yeah, one of my favorites. And individualization is my number one strength. And so as I went through my journey of 8 years within the military, experiencing these diverse, leaders, I picked pieces from each one of them to make who I am today. And a big piece of that is realizing that even in a military hierarchy, building consensus and having people invested in the mission that you're on will make that mission be more successful every single time. And that has been something that I have taken
Yeah.
to my leadership role here to great effect. So, really, it is understanding how to get these team members, soldiers, airmen
Hmm.
invested in what you're aiming to accomplish. If you can do that, you can do anything.
Yeah. It's interesting, Charles. You run such a dynamic organization in Geekdom. Why do you think they chose you? It's been a great run. You're doing fantastic stuff down there. Why do you think the leadership team at Geekdom chose Charles Woodin to do that?
I think that that'll be a question, honestly, Rod, that I will ponder for the remainder of my life. I think, everybody talks about imposter syndrome, and I think that that one question has been the thing that has planted that seed in my mind the most, because it's the hardest one for me to answer. I don't have the pedigree of a CEO. I don't have a Harvard degree to point to say that this is why I am the leader for this organization. I don't have an MBA. I have a passion that was apparent. And that would be one
Hmm.
thing that I no doubtedly could say that they saw, that they felt, that they decided as a piece of it. Second, I think that it was apparent that even though I wasn't an official leader, because I guess timeline wise, for some quick context, I was with the organization for a year and a half as a business development manager and then as a membership director before I was promoted to CEO, where I was able to show my I think willingness and ability to get this team that I was not necessarily the leader of on board with a trajectory or something that I was passionate about. So I think really that passion and my ability to get others convinced that it was worthy of doing were probably the two most important reasons why they took a risk on me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I've got the gray to show that it takes a lot of toll to get there,
That's
but
right.
it has been a fun ride, 6 years now. So
Fantastic. So what's one of those stories that shaped you in the Air Force and helped you have that grit, determination, and it sounds like focus as well to lead. What's one of those stories that you remember that you're like, bam, that sticks with you from that?
you know, one of the stories that sticks out for me was a sign of one of those good leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was TDY to Okinawa at one point, and I was still doing some training. We're always doing training in the military. I mean, no matter what role you're in, right?
Yeah.
But we were still doing some training, and we're on this TDY, and it happens to be during a holiday. I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it was like Martin Luther King holiday, something like that, where
Yep.
we back at base in Omaha, Nebraska, we wouldn't be in the office, right? But here we are, TDY. And I remember my boss saying, "Hey, we're going to go in. We're going to do, I don't remember what it was, transcription, something like that. We're going to do work. We're going to train." And I remember us as airmen being like, "Hey, why? Like nobody else is working. Like nobody else on the base is working. Why would we be doing that?" And it was his justification, like, "Hey, we're here for a reason. This is the mission that we're on. This is a day that we have where we can get this mission done better, where we can improve, and we're going to do that." And
Mm-hmm.
I think I was resistant at first, went along with it because, again, him being the leader, and he had built that, I think, like, relationship with me that I trusted him. I knew that he had our best, intents in mind. And we went along with it. And to be honest with you, that helped me see, it helped us become a better team together. Number one, B, it made
Wow.
me a better operator for the job that I did. And it also helped me realize that, uh, there is a time to get things done, and there is a time to take a break. And when
Yep.
you've got something in front of you that is not done yet, you can't check that box, and there's no reason to stop. And some arbitrary reason that there is a holiday somewhere back where you are does not necessarily have an effect on what the mission is right in front of us right now. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that was so helpful. And I owe that, that sergeant at the time, I even remember his name, Nathan Price. Great guy. I owe him a lot, just for helping me realize that at that moment. And that is a piece of leadership that I continue and to have in my back pocket that I pull out whenever I need, today.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a great story. That's a great learning point. Thanks for sharing that, man. So here you are at Geekdom. Tell me about Geekdom. What do you guys do? What are you passionate about right now? What's going on with Geekdom?
Yeah. So I'll give you, again, going back to the Clifton strengths. One of my top strengths is context. So let me give you just real quick context on where Geekdom started and where we are today. We were founded in 2011 by one of our founders, a gentleman by the name of Graham Weston. He invested in and founded, with the founding team, a company here locally in San Antonio called Rackspace. It grew from three founders that pitched him the idea in
Yeah.
1998 to a company that sold for $4 billion to private equity in 2016. But along that journey, Graham learned some lessons, and they led to Geekdom. Those lessons that he learned were really encapsulated in one email that was sent to him back in around 2008 when they acquired a company. And they asked one of the three co-founders to relocate to San Antonio to be a part of Rackspace. And one of the co-founders said, "No, I'm not going to do it. And here are the reasons why. There's no urban core to speak of in San Antonio. There's no startup scene, and there's no developers. And so because of that, I'm moving to Austin instead, and I'll commute, but that's the best you're going to get from me." And that
Yeah.
one email became the rallying cry that led to Graham's investment in Geekdom, and among other things. And really, we here at Geekdom were intended to solve that startup piece of that identification, right? Is to say, if we don't have a startup ecosystem here, let's make something that will have an effect to change that. And that's what Geekdom was. And so we came out with another co-founder, a gentleman by the name of Nick Longo, who was really,
Mm-hmm.
for the way that I look at it, as the operator to make this a reality. Graham's part of the
Okay.
vision. Nick was the operator to make this a reality. And Nick brought a unique aspect, which was culture building. He was amazing at building culture. And the real question though was, if we've decided that this was going to be the place where startups were born, and we decided that that was going to be the leader within the startup ecosystem within San Antonio to get that ball rolling, how do we do that? And the two of them went on this exploratory trip across, the United States at the time to see what was happening, like this idea around the country. And what they found were these, new ideas, which were called co-working spaces, right? We had at that time, WeWork was just getting started. They had gone and they had seen incubators as well, like 500 startups, a Y Combinator, but they had realized that there needed to be a kind of mix of these two things: a space for things to get done and people to commingle and collaborate, but then B, some form of programming. And the way that they approached this was two-pronged. One was the space, Geekdom, ran by Nick Longo and built with a culture of being helpful and connecting with individuals when you walk into the space, which still remains here today. A second piece was a kind of secondary, but it was a piece of this, was an investment into Techstars to host one of their accelerators down here in San Antonio, which at that time, Techstars, I think, was in Boulder and then maybe New York at the time, maybe one other place. But San Antonio was not on the list of Techstars like, yeah, we need to be there. It was Graham's will to make that happen. And that was really the catalyst that led to the creation of a startup ecosystem here in San Antonio. Flash forward though, that was 2011 when Geekdom was originally founded. And as you flash forward to when I joined the team in 2017, some of the landscape had changed. It was obvious that Geekdom was still here to stay, still building startups, still being a place for those things to happen. But Techstars had gone through a shift in their model, and they had closed down the accelerator here in San Antonio, and they had one in Austin, which at the time in 2016, 17 was, on a meteoric rise for, startup activities. And so there was a lot of gravitational pull there. And I came at the cost of Techstars here. And so I joined the Geekdom team with this somewhat of an identity crisis at that moment, where it was, okay, we have a place. It is operating as a co-working space, but that programming piece is missing. What do we do for the trajectory of Geekdom going forward to solve that? And that is really where as I was brought in as CEO in 2019, that was my thing I was going to tackle. And the way that I decided to tackle that was through reimagining who we are, what we do. And the way that we approach it, co-working is still a piece of what we do, but it is secondary to really two focus areas. One is entrepreneurial programming. So we have a programmatic pipeline that takes really any aspiring founder to come in, ideate, cultivate, shape, and grow their idea into a viable business that is ready for the next level, whether that is to sell to their consumers, whether business or straight to consumers, whether that is to get investment, to go through later programming accelerators, whatever that is. Our job is to take them from 0 to 1. And we do that pretty routinely and quantifiably. We have on any given moment, like right now, I think we're tracking about 122 different startups that we have touched over this last year and a half that are in the form of that process in some way, shape, or form. And that's not counting. There is a large number. I want to say that if we counted the ones who start the journey but do not continue down, we're over 300, over 300 different startups. And but it is something, once you commit beyond that, we're looking at about 122 or so. And love that work. But then the other piece of it is community building, which is so important, because you need to have a community of people who are invested in order to help these entrepreneurs grow. And so our new mission under my leadership went from the place where startups are born to building San Antonio one entrepreneur at a time. And the thought behind that was, the overarching why we exist is to reshape San Antonio in a meaningful way. How we do that is through entrepreneurship. And we went away. I chose to go away from the word startup for a couple different reasons. Happy to talk about that. But yeah, that is who we are, what we do now, and continuing to do it and growing it. And so now my focus is, as we look at that ecosystem holistically over a decade into it, how do we make sure that it has all of the pieces it's missing? Capital is always something that we're seeking more of. Right. Later stage programming, corporate partnerships, governmental partnerships. That's where a lot of my attention is today, while we continue to do the routine work of the programming and producing founders out of that.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what, this here explains exactly why I wanted you on the podcast. Is I knew there was more to the story than I knew, and I wanted to hear about that. And it's interesting. How much time do you guys spend on teaching these entrepreneurs about customer development? How do you help them figure that piece out?
That to me is one of the most important pieces. And I'll break it
Mm-hmm.
down really quick with our programmatic journey. We have our very first program, which is called the Startup Boot Camp. If you've ever experienced the Startup Weekend in the past, also run by Techstars, it is a 3 day long crash course in getting your business model written out and putting some quick, tests and validation to it, right? That program is that beginning point where we have so many individuals who start that, but right after that you shift into our incubator program, and that is where
Yep.
the rubber meets the road. That is where that customer development, that market validation really begins. And we look at incubation stage at really product validation. You may have an MVP when you enter into the incubator, but we need to get you to a product, and we need you to understand what pivots need to happen at this stage for you to have something that somebody actually wants to buy. So customer
That's right.
development is a huge piece of that. I would then add it is reinforced with our next stage program, which is called our pre-accelerator. And the pre-accelerator to us is really a go-to-market process. And you spend that time refining how you talk about your company and a pitch deck and all that. That is obviously through any startup programming, that's a big piece. But a large portion of this is really making sure that you are going out on the street, you are talking to, your market, you are getting that customer validation and feedback, and it is making its
Yeah.
way into your business model in a meaningful way. So that happens pretty often throughout that secondary stage of building here out of Geekdom.
That's fantastic. So many people just want to go get the funding. I just
Of
need money.
course.
And it's like,
Yep.
no, it's not about the money. It's about, do you have, can you get the clients? Can you get the traction? And they just want to skip that part. I just need the money. No. You don't need the money. You need the traction. You need product market fit. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We spend most of our time right there, Rod, which is trying to convince them that the best type of investment you can get is dollars that customers pay you for the thing that you provide. And it is
Yes.
the best.
That's
So
right. That is right, man. It makes me wonder. Do you do this for people just in San Antonio? Do they have to be physically in San Antonio? Or if I have somebody that I want to go through your program, can I send them your way or what?
So you're touching on a point that is in my mind routinely right now. I would say to your answer as directly as I can answer, San Antonio centric now. We have been physically, because of that co-working piece of our model,
Yeah.
have been physically constrained, for lack of a better term, with those programs. But it is ultimately a part of our mission, building San Antonio one entrepreneur at a time. So obviously that is never going to leave who we are and what we do. I would say though we are actively really trying to explore, specifically post-COVID, we
Yeah.
as a community are not always physically together, and we need to be more agile to be able to do that. And so we have plans. I don't know, I couldn't tell you right now, and I don't want to be one of those people that commits that we're going to
Right.
do something and then not end up doing it. But I feel pretty confident that within, by the end of 26, we will have a virtual option that others from outside San Antonio will be able to partake in. But all of it will be still centered around San Antonio as the beneficiary of this economic development work in the long run. So
Sure.
I'll say that we've made partnerships though with local, more regional ecosystems, Brownsville, Texas, my old Rio Grande Valley connections down there, to be able to share some of this programming with them. And we've gone down
Yep.
there, facilitated some of it because we view them as close partners, and we work, the better we work together, the better the region will be. And we've done that same with Bernie, which is just northwest of us here.
Sure.
So I'm really open to doing closer partnerships with them in the meantime as we develop what this virtual offering and more learning management system options may look like. But right now the programming is done primarily in person.
Understood. Understood. Well, you got Startup Week coming just around the corner, right? That's got to be. You got to have
Yes,
that right
sir.
in your front dashboard right now, looking at that. And how does the veteran community, and a lot of veterans at Santone, how does the veteran community fit into Geekdom? How do you help those veteran founders succeed?
So we are, we're one, come all type of a place. So veterans are more than welcome. When I look though at how do we serve them in particular, not only from my past, but to the point you just made, which is that we have such a large presence of them here. How do we speak to them particularly? How do we help them, uniquely the way that they need to be helped? We've always looked for a partner to help us with that. And right now we are, working really closely with any partner that is willing to work around entrepreneurship and help us build programming around that. Our programming is applicable to military veterans, but we really want to find more programs that we can add to our menu of options for them, just for them. And so we're working, trying to work with IVMF from, Syracuse University, trying to explore some options there. I know that we've, trying to work with PenFed, other entities, really just see what programs are working outside of San Antonio that can be replicated here, and what role can Geekdom play as a partnership there. Is our programming helpful in prepping them for these later stage options? Is our space beneficial for it? That's the stage that you're catching me in right now. So I don't have a one go-to answer today, but it is something I'm actively searching at this very moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with startups in San Antonio being such a cybersecurity headquarters of the country, really, how does startups really fit into the whole concept of national defense? That's such an important piece, but there's a lot of talk about it today. Anduril and the other big one, I can't think of the name right now. But talk to me about the importance of startups in developing and securing our country.
Palantir, I think, is the other one you're thinking of. But yeah, I mean, it is something that I think is so pertinent, because not only are we as a national defense, for the United States in general, we need to remain innovative. We are in a period of time, specifically with AI, where there are so many different possibilities that lay right in front of us that can be overwhelming at times, but also need to be something that we as a military, we as a country are surveying and advancing in every single day. I think the best benefit that we have as San Antonio is that talent pipeline that leaves a base every single day here within the city. And how do we capture them to be able to help solve the problems that they intimately know? I will take one step out of the military and reference something that, as we've done the work we do here at Geekdom, we've learned one thing above all else. The best successful founders within startups are those who have a market fit with the product or with the problem that they're trying to solve. And so they are intimately knowledgeable about the product, or the issue that they're trying to solve, because they lived it, they breathed it, they dealt with it. When I look to how do we remain innovative for a national defense purpose, we have people that are leaving Lackland Air Force Base, Fort Sam Houston, every single day, that have an intimate knowledge of what they're dealing with, and they have solutions in their heads on how to fix that. How do we get this programming and these resources in front of them as soon as we possibly can, so that they can then create these solutions for the government to later acquire, later contract, later work with? That is where I feel we can be very unique around San Antonio. We've had some great successes, specifically in cybersecurity. We had a local company here called the Denim Group, which took, I want to say, 10, 20 years, built products and services that helped around cybersecurity defense in the commercial world. But they have ties to the military and ended up selling their company in 21. I forgot the name of the company that ended up buying them, but it was a great exit for the city. And then you have those founders who now still remain here, who can bring their expertise in how to develop those companies, specifically in the cybersecurity realm, and bringing them back to the individuals who are leaving the military. And we've had another local success story called Infosite, which came from a military veteran coming into our space, attending a cybersecurity boot camp that we had hosted, who then got funding, grew it, and sold the company. Maybe it was 3 years ago. So it's, how do we continue to replicate that? To me, it is continuing to do that programming, and then feeding in that veteran community and the active duty military into this community as much as possible. Lower the barriers.
That's right. Fantastic. I know you're working with Alan, and Alan with the Veteran Resource Center, or
I think they're calling it V-Source, is what, if I remember correctly.
Got it. And do you know much about that, or do you want to
Yeah,
Elaborate on
so
that.
yeah, it's what we're doing is again for Geekdom is working with partners like Alan and
Hmm.
Melanie who are trying to create a one-stop shop for veterans to be able to start their resource exploration around building a company, a startup. And so what they're bringing to bear is what's called vSource, and what we're doing as Geekdom is giving them the platform to be able to have a space for those things to happen. So it's going to be housed out of here at Geekdom. They're going to have an office space here. And additionally, we're going to be working with them quite intimately when it comes to San Antonio Startup Week. As you mentioned just a little bit ago, for me, that is right in front of my face today.
Yeah.
October 13th to the 17th is our big Super Bowl. And vSource is going to be a huge piece of pulling that veteran community together for that week. So I was looking at the rough draft schedule just earlier today, and the military veteran piece is grown significantly because of the
Awesome.
work of Alan and Melanie and what they do. So really just trying to figure out how we fuel that. And the way we fuel it now is giving it a place and giving it a platform with San Antonio Startup Week and Geekdom as the space.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Really appreciate that. The the it's interesting. I was just thinking. You talked about 300 companies started to go through. I'll call it your pipeline, your education pipeline, and only 130 or 140 or make it through that. But I think that's so valuable because if you have 100 people start with you, and 70% of them figure out within months that that's not the right idea. Think all the time, energy, money, everything that everybody saves by getting that figured out. That's just a huge. I would call it its own force multiplier. Find out what ideas are going to work and which ones aren't, and move on and continue on. Now, I'm sorry.
100%.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more. One thing I'll add to that is we started a partnership with the city of San Antonio with a program called Launch SA, and that has a scope much wider than Geekdom itself. Its scope is any small business, all the way, from beginning to closure. And the thing that I learned with the work that we did there was that closing piece is a lot more important than we think that it is. We
Yeah.
know the statistics. We've heard them that, 80 plus 90% of any company that gets formed will close within 5 years. I think one of the things that I realized as soon as we jumped into this work with Launch SA was when they're closing down, there are certain ways that you can do that where it does not have a negative effect. And to your point, if we can catch that early and make them realize, like, hey, this is not for me. This solution does not have the legs to grow the way that I want to. Those are the things that we see so often in the early stage programming,
Yeah.
where we feel that is a positive number to showcase, to your point. But then also, as we see it at that later stage, and helping them untangle that knot that may be the business is also helpful for us to understand what got them there. So I love being at either end of that process.
So talk to me about AI. I mean, not AI. We'll come back to that in a second. But collaboration, the importance of collaboration between founders or different founders. How important do you see the whole concept of collaboration in business today?
I mean, I think it's cliche, but it's the most important thing. And the reason why I say that is because if you're looking across at the person next to you as a competition, it just creates a very negative environment for
Hmm.
you to just exist, because it becomes survival. It becomes, just not fun and not exciting. So
Yeah.
if you can find even the smallest piece of arena where you can collaborate, there is so much more that can benefit from that. Because if you look at the world as, it's not a zero sum game, it becomes so much nicer. And we see that play out every day. I will add
Yeah.
that though too, just from the work that we do here at Geekdom. Again, going back to, we started in 2011 along this journey. Now, when you look across the ecosystem, Rod, you can see at least 10 other entities that do similar work to what we do. And the more that we can find places to work with them on, the better ecosystem we will have, because there's no way that this one entity that I sit at the helm of today could
Hmm.
serve the 1+ million people across this city that have any aspiration of becoming an entrepreneur. I cannot do it on my own. We cannot do it on our own. And there are different audiences, there are different styles, there are different, outcomes that
Hmm.
you will find out through all of this. And so the better that we are in knowing what strength we have, how to play to that strength, and then how to use or work with somebody else who has a different strength, that is where amazing things can happen. And I would apply that to businesses as well. So if you're starting a business today that is going to be utilizing AI to help, a business make better decisions, that's great. Well, what about this other entity, which is using AI to help customers find
Yeah.
the right business to work with? Though there are natural collaboration pieces that can happen there, and connecting those, being in a space, a community of others that are building, just will make better outcomes, and we see it every day.
Absolutely. So speaking of AI, why don't we all just go home? I mean, why are we even trying to work? I mean, what? So tell me about the importance of AI and or I just love to hear your thoughts from where you sit in the world of startups. How do we embrace or do we run from AI? Tell me what your insights are on this.
I mean, I'm the type of person that embraces every new change. I mean, the only thing certain in life is that things will change. To me, AI is a force multiplier at its core. And when I
Mm-hmm.
think about the biggest constraint that we deal with at the work that we do, is a founder who has a great idea, but not the resources enough to make it a reality. This, you know, blowing up of AI is making their lives or their capabilities so much stronger. They can do so much more. They have to wear multiple hats as a founder. This
Yeah,
tool can help you do that better. They can
that's
help
right.
you be more effective, more efficient, and you can also leverage it for something you and I talked about earlier too. It's not the end all be all, but it can really help you do customer validation and research and market research. You can do a lot of that now because it's easier to leverage these systems and to challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I am leaning into it very heavily. We have probably, I mean, the last two investments that we've made out of companies that have come through our community fund investment are AI based. We don't have a bend towards that. It is just those were the most investable companies because they have the greatest potential in front of them. One of them is a company that's focusing on market research for other companies to have at their fingertips, basically a dashboard where they can say, I'm tracking, let's say you're a startup founder who is building one of the other ones that we have is an AI based company that's doing real estate, commercial real estate deals. So let's
Yeah,
say that they want to understand, is there any other company that's doing similar work to that? They can leverage Tabs, which is the other AI platform, to keep track on 5 or 6 different
yeah,
companies that they consider competitors. They can find out information. Are they hiring in certain places? Have they raised funds? Are they doing any SEC filings? All that is at their fingertips because of this AI empowered tool, which, I mean, maybe 3 people have built this tool thus far, but it is growing so fast. And it's because of that capability that we
yeah,
have at our fingertips today.
yeah. AI is not coming; it's here. It's oh, it's coming. No, no, it's here. The question is, are we going to use it? Are we going to embrace it, or are we going to get ran over by it?
Yep.
It's not if, it's when, and it's here. So it's amazing. So I know our time grows short here, but what's one thing I should have asked you that I have not asked you yet, Charles?
Oh man, that's a good question. I guess one thing I'll say is what keeps me going, and my answer to that would be something I planted a seed in earlier in our conversation, which was where I grew up, and I planted the seed of Detroit and Flint for a particular reason. Anybody who's followed the trajectory of those two cities over the past couple decades, 3 decades, there was 2 decade period of time there in particular where Detroit, will use as a reference point, was not doing great. I mean, it went bankrupt in, I want to say it was '08 or no '09.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that spoke to was, specifically when you join the military too, your identity is tied to where you're from so
That's
much.
right.
And I love Detroit. I'm a Detroit fanatic when it comes to sports, Lions, no matter what, Red Wings, Tigers, Pistons, all the above.
Yep.
But one of the things that I realized was I had, whether admitted or not, somewhat of a little bit of a sore point in my heart for the city because it was never in a place where you could brag about the city, its economic development, its growth, and so on and so forth. Over those 2 decades that I was really growing up around there, and then for a decade while I was in the military, almost, those were it was not exciting. And so when you flash forward to this opportunity I was presented here at Geekdom, just to kind of give you a really quick rundown, I was working at Apple. I never thought I would leave Apple, Rod. I loved
Right.
doing the work that I was doing there. I was helping small businesses leverage Apple technology to grow. It was meeting every need I could have. And then I walked into this building and I was taught that not only would I be able to do that same work here, but that I would be able to play a part in the redevelopment and identification or identity of San Antonio in its downtown. It brought me all the way back to that kid who was growing up around Detroit, but really wasn't a place that I saw great opportunity when I decided to leave to go into the military. And here I have this opportunity to play a part in the city that my kids now call home, that I could potentially build opportunities and something exciting that they would, when they turn 20, decide to stay here for. That to me was something that unlocked a piece of my heart that I couldn't say no to. And that's why I continue to do what I do today and why I can't imagine what I'm going to do after this. So I'm going to have to pry my hand off of the steering wheel of this company at some point because I'm not stopping.
Yeah. You know what I want to say right now is put me in, coach. That's fantastic. It's your energy is part of why you're doing what you're doing. That's fantastic. So just a few quick questions left. What are a couple of resources that every entrepreneur across the country should be aware of, reading, sign up for? What are those 2 or 3 resources you're like, that's the go-to?
For me, one of the big ones that I'll point out is when I read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, it unlocked something within me that helped me encapsulate the weird world of what geekdom is and make it presentable to others to get excited about. So to me, could not recommend that more. Another book that I really fell in love with was by a gentleman by the name of Ben Horowitz. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And in that book, he really talks about building a startup during the dot-com bust and surviving that, but then becoming an investor on the other side of it through Andreessen Horowitz. It's an amazing book, and he kind of flips the approach of a business book on its head. And every chapter starts off with a quote from some rapper. I love it, and really spoke to me. So those 2 books, I would say. And then when you're talking about resources, I'll just add one last book, which was a book called Startup Communities, which is written by Brad Feld, one of the founders of Techstars. And the thing that I gravitated to within that book was this collaborative, question that you had asked earlier. It requires, in order to have a startup ecosystem that thrives, it requires all these different players being a part of it: universities, government, business, and then the entrepreneurial piece. Capital as another. It requires all of them to work together to get to that end goal of having an ecosystem where a founder can walk in with an idea and leave with a game-changing, company like Rackspace. To me, those 3 books have shaped who I am today and the work that we do every single day.
That's fantastic. Hey, Charles, I want to say thank you so much for your time today. It's been I'd go on for another hour just learning from you, and maybe a little bit with you, but 99% learning from you. So very much appreciated. I want to say thank you by making it a $100 donation to the MilCom Founders Scholarship Fund, and that goes towards the kid of a military family to attend college or a trade school of their choice. So thank you so much for your time and your insights today. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the MilCom Founders Podcast. If you know a MilCom founder with a story to share, reach out to us at milcomfounders.com. For each guest on our show, One Degree Financial donates $100 to the Dick Wojcik Veteran Entrepreneur Scholarship Fund, supporting education for children of a MilCom business owner. Stay ready.